Hello and welcome to Tokyo Inklings. My name is CY. You can find me on tokyostationpens.com, on Instagram at tokyostationpens, and on Twitter at tokyostationmnh.
And my name is Jacob. I'm Fudefan on Instagram and on Twitter, and have a blog at fudefan.com.
And welcome. This is, I believe, 21. Can you believe we're 21 now? This is like the almost the end of the year episode, no? This is the end of the year episode, and then next time we'll be in the new year.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy how things go just so fast, right?
Yeah, we started during the state of emergency, right?
Yes, in March.
Yes.
So, I mean, we say it all the time, but thank you, listeners, so much for, entertaining our idea of this podcast. When we started, we honestly weren't really, I guess, aware of what this would kind of spin out into. I mean, we've got more than 1,000 listeners every episode. Almost 400 people listening every time on the first day. So we're really, overwhelmed by the positive responses, and really thanks to all of you, everybody. You're the reason why this is possible, and you make it worth it. So thank you so much.
Yep.
As we've been doing for the previous few times, let's read a review, Jacob.
Here it comes. I was afraid of
Here
this.
it comes. So usually we read reviews, and because of the way that the Apple store is set up, we usually are reading reviews from the US. But let me read a review from South Korea today.
Oh, nice.
So, all the pretty pens, this is submitted to Apple Podcasts via South Korea, and they write, I don't usually write reviews, but I thought I'd add a few words to those who are considering listening. Japan has a significant share in the fountain pen world, but unless you speak Japanese, information isn't always available, and rarely in a timely fashion. Well, now you have CY and Jacob, who will do the job for you, all in one package with their enthusiasm for pens. The Japanese terms are a bit confusing at first, but I promise you will get used to them. And I don't listen to many pen podcasts, but this is one I never leave queued for long. And that was a 5-star review. So thank you very, very much, all the pretty pens. We really, really appreciate it. And yeah, I guess we do use a lot of random Japanese phrases here and there. So that's kind of like a side effect of living in Japan, I guess.
Yeah, I guess that happens.
Yeah, but that's very, very nice.
Yes, we appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Maybe we have time for a second one?
Sure.
Jacob, you're always worried when I read reviews. I feel like you're waiting for, the announcement of, the Olympic medal winner or something. So, this review is from the US, written by Michael. Best Japan-centered fountain pen / ink podcast. CY and Jacob do a stellar job of bringing you everything new / old / interesting about the fountain pen community in Japan and beyond. Easily one of my favorite podcasts about the fountain pen community. Worth a listen, and worth starting from the beginning. They just started out, so it's not hard to breeze through them and catch up. Thank you very much, Michael.
Thank you.
So, if you would like your review to be read, or if you would like to contribute to this podcast, right now we don't have a monetary form of contribution, but it does cost money. It does cost our time to produce this podcast. So if you would like to help us, please consider writing a review for us and submitting it through Apple Podcasts, or I think there's a review system on Spotify as well. So, it really helps us and helps other people discover the podcast, and it's just a great motivator. I mean, Jacob, you're always a bit worried about negative feedback, but I think reading these reviews will help motivate Jacob to maybe eventually he'll read a review on the podcast.
Someday.
One day. All right, Jacob, we have an action-packed
Yes,
episode
definitely.
today because even though it's the end of the year, in Japan, Christmas is not like a thing. Like, I've worked every single Christmas day since I've been in Japan, and I'm not complaining because still a lot of people take days off. And Christmas is more like what New Year's is to the Western audience, I think, because I think in the West, at least in the US, Christmas you spend with your family, and then New Year's you spend with your friends partying.
Exactly.
But in Japan,
It's the
Christmas, yeah, you spend it as a couple with your significant other or your friends, and then New Year's you're with your family. And New Year's is actually the real holiday.
Although this year is it's quite short, but yeah, normally you have a longer holiday during starting from either New Year's Eve or the day before, depending on where you work, and then hopefully like 3, 4, 5, 6 days after that, depending on how the weekends line up.
Yeah, and we have a terrible weekend situation here because most of the holiday is in the weekend this year, but I'm taking the week after off, so I'm going to quote unquote work these next 2 weeks, but It's great for me because most people are already not in the office.
Yeah, it's a good time to work.
Yep. So I always like working through even like Golden Week because then I can take days off afterwards.
Yeah, but there's both good and bad, because that means when you do take time off and everyone else is working, and when you come back again, you're going to come back to a chock-full email inbox. And so.
Exactly. All right. So let's get right into it. Our acquisitions today, we have a few interesting acquisitions.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm looking at the show notes and 4 of them are mine. So maybe that's why I think they're really interesting. But the one that you put down is actually something that I really want to talk about. So why don't you get to it and let people know what it is?
Yes. So first of all, I've been doing more selling than buying. I've been doing this danshari, decluttering, slimming down my collection. But I did buy one pen. So as you know, this year I've been interested in sailor pens with this old style nibs, mostly 14K, but also 21K. So I went on Yahoo auctions and found one pen with an old style sailor 21K nib, and there was some kind of logo on the barrel. Didn't pay too much attention to that. Didn't see what it was, because as usual there was this potato quality photo, but the price was good, so I got it. And then I look at the pen, and it said HP on the barrel. I wasn't sure what that was. I think you said it looked like one of those like Web 1.0 era like internet startups, almost a cable provider. So I still wasn't sure what it was, but then I looked at the cap band, and on the cap band it says Hokkaido Police 30 years service. And I can't find any information about this online, but based on the engraving on the cap band, it does seem as if this is something that the police department in Hokkaido in northern Japan at one point, or maybe still, gives their police officers or whoever it may be after 30 years of service.
Yeah, so actually this is something that happens quite a lot, I think. People who have X years amount of service to X company or X police department usually get fountain pens as gifts, and they're usually the lowest grade of the lineup. But it's quite interesting about this one because first, it's a sailor.
Yes.
And usually when the police department is giving out things like this, and usually it's about 30 years, it's on pilots, and the cap would be engraved, but in this case, it's a fully custom sailor pen. And what's interesting about it, I think, is that it even has the year inscribed on the cap band, so they can't use it the next year.
Right.
And I've just now sent you a link to a pilot version.
Ah, yes, yes.
Yeah, so this kind of gift, I've seen it more than
Mm.
once. And I do often see the pilots a lot, and I'm also seeing some Mont Blanc now. But still, it is, let's say, not uncommon. And the one that I sent you, the link, is also 30 years. So it possibly, I mean, we don't know for sure, but I mean, of all the ones that I've seen, it's 30 years that the police officer would get this kind of a fountain pen. So it could be like a police tradition actually in Japan.
Another thing, so you said that the year is written, and you're right, it says age 17, so he's 17, and that should be 2005, and that made me wonder, at what point did Sailor start using the new nib logo? Because we know that the year after, in 2006, that's when Sailor had its 95th anniversary, and that's when they released this very much sought after 95th anniversary King of Pen Naginata Toge Rialo. And that
Yeah,
pen,
if you ever find one, let me know.
we do find them on Yahoo auctions every once in a while, but they tend to
One
go
that
very
doesn't
high.
cost me an arm.
Yeah, there's that. But that pen had the new style logo. Now, that was the King of Pen, so maybe they switched for King of Pen earlier or later, I'm not sure. But I have a feeling that this 2005 model that I have here, it might be one of the last ones with the old engraving. So maybe they switched logos around this time.
So it doesn't have a custom engraving, it has an old engraving.
It has no custom engraving. The only custom you have here is the cap band and the logo on the barrel.
Yeah, okay. All right. Yeah, I think it's a fascinating pen because one for the police department engraving. I think it speaks a bit to Sailor's model versus Pilot's model if we consider how they're doing the engraving. For Pilot's way of doing engraving, it's relatively easy, right? I mean, you just laser engrave whatever words you want on the cap, and then you fill it with gold, and that's it.
Yeah.
But Sailor seems to have taken the more difficult option for whatever reason. And it was an unnecessary way to do it, but they did it, and because of that, we are lucky to find something that's quite interesting in history.
But then makes me wonder if this is really a one-off, or if this is something that they issue every year.
Yeah, you know what? It could have been a national thing where they just made a bunch of them, and then they changed the barrel for depending on where you were.
Yeah, it's possible.
But still, there aren't that many of these because I would say never really seen one of these before. Yeah,
for sure.
All right. In other acquisitions, I got a few different items. I got my Leonardo yesterday. It's my first Leonardo, and we often get questions like, are Western pens common or popular in Japan, etc., etc.? And I would say, for the most part, it's mostly Mont Blanc and Pelican. Would you agree with that?
I think last time we also mentioned Aurora.
Lamy?
Yeah.
Yeah, Aurora, Lamy.
Yeah.
But we've been seeing a lot of Leonardo, actually, in Japan. I mean, as kind of like a rising new brand.
Yeah,
particularly, we saw one in Maruzen.
Yeah.
And we saw that they had even Japan exclusives.
Yeah, they have this exclusive, right, which is like a white cap and finial, and then there's some colorful acrylic barrel. Very similar, actually, to these Laban pens.
Yeah. Yeah, and I got one from the Italian retailer Stilo and Style, and they have a frosted demonstrator barrel. So I got two. I got one for our friend Keiko and one for myself. I've replaced the nib on mine already with an Omas nib. And I really like this pen. It's right now inked with Wagner Noir Jaune, and it's quite nice. The feed, interestingly, even though the nib is a Yowo nib, the feed is not a Yowo nib unit. So they make their own housing, which is difficult to remove, even though it's screw in. It's difficult to remove because I believe it's glued in. So they make their housing, and they make their own ebonite feeds. And I have to say, this ebonite feed is quite nice and very, very wet.
So I know that Leonardo has been in some kind of like Bach to Jovo transition. Do you think the custom housing has anything to do with that?
I think generally they're trying to transition everything to Yovo because their gold nibs now are all Yovo nibs. But I think their steel nibs are still half and half. And I don't think it's necessarily a thing to do with the housing. I think it's something to do with the nib quality and pricing. At the end, I think it's going to be pricing is the thing that would make them switch one way or another. But the problem with this pen, actually, and it's actually a big problem with a lot of pens, is that the diameter inside the pen is larger on the barrel than on the section. And sometimes when you have a sudden change in barrel diameter, you create a air bubble between the ink flow of one part of the pen to the next.
Oh, I see.
And you can see this most in vac fillers. A lot of the modern vac fillers now have Visconti calls it the power filling system or whatever, but it basically has two reservoirs. So there's a reservoir in the kind of section of the pen, and then there's one in the actual barrel of the pen, right?
Yeah.
And those two parts are not the same size because the section is smaller. I mean, like physically, the section itself is smaller than the pen. So what happens is, because the size is different, when you pour ink from the barrel, which is a bigger size, into the smaller one, you can develop these air bubbles. Okay. So it's like when you pour out like milk sometimes, and the hole is really small, right? Sometimes you see it go blop, 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 right? Yeah, that's exactly the same thing that's happening, but except the air bubble doesn't pop because the airflow is not significant enough. So what happens is you can develop this air bubble in between the two sections of the pen, and as a result, what you're going to get is an air bubble that could restrict ink flow from one part of the pen to the next.
I see.
And that's why some pens have a kind of like a needle sticking through. I know Konitz have that needle, or you have agitators.
Sure.
In the case of converters. So that's the only thing that I see about this pen that could be annoying. It hasn't really happened to me so far, but I might end up modifying this feed so that it will stick into the barrel a bit. I'm not sure yet.
By the way, that frosted design reminds me of the Penlux, the grand masterpiece, Cloud de Bay.
Yeah, and there's also that annoying glue application, which kind of annoys me. I have it in my hand right now. It's really a nice pen, but I do see glue application, and that does annoy me. But I'm just gonna have to live with it. Second thing that I got back is not really like a new pen. It's more like a freshly urushied pen. And I got two pens out from Bokumondo. So one I've actually already talked about, which is the Ishime finish, the black Ishime finish with the gold ingots, or I don't know what you call them, these little gold dots all across the cap and the vac knob.
You mean the copy of my pen?
Yes, exactly, the copy of your pen. And we talked about that pen, I think 3 or 4 episodes ago. I don't exactly remember when, but we talked about this pen before.
Yeah.
And shortly after I gotten that pen, I had the crazy idea to swap the barrel parts with a clear 823. And I found out that it actually looks pretty good, because the barrel and the section are not the same finish as the cap. So I decided, you know what? If I just get one cap done, then I could have two pens. I could have two Urushi pens. So, math prevailed, and in the end, I went and actually Hiroko had an issue where she needed a 743 finial nut.
Yeah.
So I said, here's the entire cap. Just take the nut, and all I need is the cap back. So that was done, and it's nice. I had it done in the same finish as the body, but on the cap band on the bottom, I had it done in Naden.
That looks very nice. Rather than under the cap band.
I believe I brought it on Wednesday for you to see, right?
Yeah.
What did you think about that?
Normally, I'm not a big Raden fan, but I think that the subtle Raden on the cap band actually looks very nice. I like it.
Yeah, I like it as well, because it's not like I think sometimes Raden can be too shiny.
Yes, you can overdo it very easily.
Yeah, and depends on, I think, what type of Raden you use. I'm not sure, honestly. I'm not an expert on this, but the two pens that I have with I have more than two, but two of the pens that I have from her, they actually use very unshiny Raden. And I think it's quite nice and quite subtle. I mean, if you're looking for it, but if you don't know to look for it, you might miss it the first time.
There's this design on your, I think the first one you got, which is this Mont Blanc that has a sort of dark blue Karanuri and a little bit of Raden, right? That's also, I agree, that's very nice, because it doesn't, it's not too much of it.
It's not the show stealer. It's more like an accent.
Exactly.
Right. I mean, when you wear earrings, you want it to be about your face, not about your earrings. Anyways, so I got that, but I think what's also interesting about this nib, and now I'm touting my own horn a bit, is the nib. I managed to find a way to fit size 10 nibs into size 15 pens. And for me, that opens up a kind of like a whole new world, because as we know, the size 10 is actually the size from Pilot where they offer the most nib assortment.
Yeah, because the music nib is not available in 15, right?
Yes, I think most of the other nibs are available in the 15, but the music nib is not. And additionally, yesterday I was on Facebook and I saw Leo, Inquisitive Quill.
Yeah.
He posted a pen on one of the Facebook groups, and I believe it's a size 10 as well. Yeah, it's a size 15. Okay, it was size 15, which said ESM.
Yeah, that one I remember. A few years ago, Pilot sold some oblique nibs.
Yeah, that's what he was saying.
Yeah, and both left and right, and they were only offered at Itoya. And was for a brief moment. It seemed like a trial run, but I don't think they did anything after that.
Yeah, but I guess it was not. It's not size 10. But yeah, anyways, I found a way to fit size 10 nibs into size 15, and for me this was a huge development because specifically, as you mentioned, the music nib, and I wanted a music nib in my 823 because I do a flex modification to Pilot music nibs in order to make them flexible music nibs, and the flex that you can achieve on these nibs is incredible. I haven't done the full treatment to my particular nib yet, but you can easily get up to you can get up to 2 millimeters easily, I would say. But it's something that I was inspired to do. I think almost 2 years ago now, when I saw some vintage music nibs online, but I didn't want to spend the money to get the nib, so I decided to learn how to grind nibs instead. So for me, it's great because, as everybody knows, the Con 70, even though it's a huge it's a huge capacity in the Con 70, it's not the easiest to use, and it's not the easiest to clean. And when you have a flex nib, it's honestly not that much ink either. So being able to fit this size 10 nib into an 823 really was a revelation to me.
So this is the nib grind you keep telling me that you don't want to do again, but you still you still advertise it.
Yeah, so it's not an easy grind to do. The particular nib that I did took me about 5 hours to do.
Right.
And compared to the, if I'm doing like a cursive italic or whatever, that takes me like, I don't know, 15 minutes maybe, probably less, right? So, but yeah, I'm very happy with this nib. Interestingly, the nib, when it's fit into the pen, doesn't look that different from the size 15. It's just a smidge shorter, but unless you're really, really putting it side by side, it doesn't look too small for the pen.
Yeah, the size 10 nibs aren't actually that small. We may have talked about that before, but I did this comparison, and Pilot's size 10 is basically the same size as Sailor's large 21K nibs.
Yes, and you also told me that the sections between the size 10 and size 15 are compatible.
Yes.
Yeah, so if you wanted a size 15 nib on your size 10 pen, you can go buy both and switch it out. Cost you some money, though.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. You wrote with the pen. What did you think?
You're right that there's a lot of flex. I'm not really that much into flex, but I can see why. I mean, there's definitely a lot of line variation you get. It's very wet nib, and it may have to do with the combination of nib and feed, but it was very wet for sure.
Yeah, and the thing with these this particular nib grind is that usually it's starved of ink, because it requires a lot of ink to function. But on this particular nib, I fit a Justice tab. So I took a tab from a vintage Pilot Justice, the out of production model ones. So I'm very, very sorry for people who really care about that kind of history. I don't particularly care, so I do monstrous things with them. But I basically broke a pen, took out the tab, and I inserted it onto this nib combination, and that serves as an overfeed. Now, when I posted this on Reddit, a lot of people were asking me, what is an overfeed? So an overfeed is like the Emperor tab, which you get on Sailor Emperors. And these used to be, well, not common, but they certainly are not unheard of in vintage pens. But they essentially serve as a feed that's on the top. And the way that it helps is that through capillary action, when you have something over the slit or the breather hole, it helps draw the ink up towards the overfeed. And in this pen, when I look at it, because there's a kind of a empty space between the curve or the bend, you can see that ink actually piles up inside that little gap. And then when you write with it, what you get is that the nib is able to use both the ink that's stored in the feed and in the over.
Yes, I remember reading in one of the recent issues of Shimino Bungobak, there was an article about the various Sailor specialty nibs, and for the Emperor tab they mentioned that the purpose of it was to allow you to write on like highly textured, like washi tape, make sure the ink flow stays constant.
Yeah, and you know what? I think it's because these textured stuff, it absorbs ink more easily. So yeah, that's probably a reason why. I've noticed that when I write with my Emperor pens, the pens with Emperor tabs, I don't run out of ink even if I leave them uncapped.
But there's a difference here, right, between the purpose of this Emperor tab versus the purpose of the Justice tab, right? Because the Justice is about controlling how stiff the nib is, right?
Originally, yes. In Justice pens, you can use the tab to adjust to the hard or soft setting. And the vintage ones, the nibs on those pens are actually much more flexible. So there was actually a difference. In the modern Justice, there is honestly not that big of a difference between the hard and the soft settings. Maybe it's just the lift is a bit more firm, but honestly, it's not significant unless you do what Mr. Inquisitive Quill did and fit a size 10 FA into the Justice.
Yeah, I saw that. That was a glorious hack.
Yeah, I actually tried it at Shosaikan. I was talking to the staff there, and I convinced them to let me try it out. But I didn't want to spend $500 on both the pens.
Right, but your pen is now the mother of all Franken pens.
Yeah, because it has the 743 cap, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm very happy with that, and they're on my Instagram. Both of the pens, the original with the clear barrel as well as the new one, and I've put a comparison between a FA size 15 that I've modified for flex versus this 3-time music nib, which I'm calling a Sai. You can see the difference between the flex, and the Sai has noticeably a bit more flex, even though I haven't done the full modification on it yet. All right, next item on the list. I've been getting too many pens. I need to sell more pens, but this is actually kind of related to the last topic. And I've just sent you a link online. It's the original vac filler from Pilot. So, the 823, everybody in the West knows it as a vac filler, but in Japan, you call it a P style pen, which is a plunger style pen. In Japanese, it's called the Pishiki.
They still call the 823 Pishiki today.
Exactly. It's just that they've given a model number to the Pishiki. And there are various different styles. So there's a Pishiki, there's like a Enshiki, there's Eishiki, etc. So there are a bunch of different styles, but this vac filler is called the Pishiki. And I already had a original pre-war Pishiki. So they were making these vac fillers all the way in the 30s. And oh, by the way, the war, meaning World War II, in Japan started in 1933. So we're talking about early 30s or even late 20s. And I had one in jet black, and I was very, very lucky to find on Yahoo Auctions this other one, which I'd never seen before. I'd never known that Pilot made this material, but it's like it looks like stacked celluloid, but it's not. It's this how would you say it? It's like this celluloid with horizontal translucent stripes, and I think they probably used to be transparent, but now it's ambered. But I think it's so interesting that today we associate Pilot with really the boring stuff, like the black pen, gold trim. I mean, they have a lot of interesting nib variations, but in terms of body, in terms of material, it's Sailor is the one that's really making the innovations. Platinum is doing different stuff with texture, and Pilot black, right? But in the past, actually, Pilot made a lot of attractive celluloid pens.
Yeah.
And this particular one, it's on my Twitter, so we'll link it to that. And I'm quite happy with it. Now I have the original Pishiki and the new Pishiki.
Nice.
All right. So sorry I took up so much time in the acquisitions, but we also have a lot of new product releases.
Yeah. There's a lot.
So you got an interesting postcard last weekend, I think.
Right, so this is for Maruzen's annual pen fair that we talked about before, probably in one of our very first episodes. So they usually sell a number of limited edition pens every year. And they announced the pens in advance. They are now taking pre-orders for these pens. So they send out a postcard to members of like Tomo no Kai, which is their loyal customers basically. And so I got that one, and there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 pens that they're advertising.
Yeah, I think they started the pre-order thing, I want to say last year, and that was a huge controversy, right? Because a lot of people couldn't get the pens at the show.
Yes, so we know people who wanted to come to the pen show, and the main reason was they wanted to buy this blue Pilot custom Urushi.
Yeah.
but it sold out before the pen fair even started. So
which is the annoying thing, right? About
yes.
Maruzen.
Yeah, so I think that wasn't ideal. I mean, we knew people who wanted to come from overseas. No, they couldn't do that anyway because of the pandemic, right? But it makes it, I guess, a bit less attractive to people coming from afar if the regular customers can just order online or just call and make their reservations. So, but anyways, so for that reason, a lot of people wanted to know whether Maruzen would do another custom Urushi this year, and first of all, no, they're not. So that might be a bit of disappointment for some, but there are definitely interesting pens here. So first of all, they're doing another one of these so-called vest styles, so these flat top pens. They've done a few of them, I think at least 2 or 3 so far. So these are Urushi pens, flat top, and they use this size 10 nibs. I think it's 18K, but it's size 10 and not 15. There are quite a few of these Pilot special editions and limited editions that are based on size 10. I'm not sure why that is, but that is the case here as well. Yeah.
What? This is a green Urushi pen, and
yes.
I've heard that green Urushi is very, very hard to do.
That might be the case. I haven't heard that, but that might be the case, yeah.
Yeah, I was talking to Shosaikan, and they're the ones that told me that green Urushi is actually very, very rare, and not many people do that. I mean, usually most Urushi is like red and black, right? So
right.
Those are the traditional colors. But yeah, green is not common.
And then on this postcard, it says the available nibs are F, FM, M, and B. But that turns out that was not correct.
Yes, because we went to Maruzen on Wednesday, and they had FM crossed out, and instead they have BB.
Which is an interesting choice. I think we talked about it last time, but FM is one of the most popular, if not the most popular nib option.
That's right. I don't know what's going on. I think it's correct to make a BB nib, but I think what you sacrifice on here is probably the M size or the B size. Actually, you probably sacrifice the B and make BB instead.
Yeah,
because if you're going up to B, you might as well go up to BB, right?
Yeah, exactly. The BB is definitely more interesting. But anyway, so this is not really a new model, right? So this is something Maruzen has done a few years, for the last few years. And then the next model, the next pen in the list is also a variation of something they have done for the last few years. And that is a Sailor King Prophet, so King of Pen, in a Prophet cigar shape. But it's aluminum and it's blue.
Yes, and I went to the shop and I asked them specifically about the section and the finial.
Yeah.
And last year's model, which was a brown color, actually had translucent brown finial section and end knob instead of the aluminum. So I wanted to know if this year the entire pen would be aluminum or not. And I do believe that the section, finial, and end knob are not aluminum. They're actually plastic. They look like a different material, even on the more higher quality photos.
Yes, that would be consistent with what I've done previous year, yeah. It's a nice looking pen, though.
What do you think about, I mean, is this something that you would buy? Because it's quite expensive. It's more than $1,000.
I think personally this appeals to me more than some of the other Sailor King of Pen based models that they have announced recently. So I think it looks very good.
Yeah, I definitely think it looks really good. And the blue aluminum, obviously aluminum is a material that's very easily anodized, so you can have various different colors. I think what's probably appealing to you is that the section is not aluminum.
Exactly.
Yeah. And anyways, aluminum King of Pens are quite rare. And do you think you'd have to worry about scratches by posting it?
No, and the reason why I think that is that posting is so common here that I'm sure they've taken that into account.
Yeah, and the reason why I ask actually is because I'm looking at the postcards, and almost all of the pens are posted. Even
Yes.
there's one Urushi one that's posted as well, and the Eboya is posted.
Yeah, yeah. And there's going to be only 34 of these.
Yeah.
But I think there was something similar last year. I think it's a small number, but the last year's model, as we just said, is still available. So I'm not sure this one's going to sell out that fast.
Yeah, I agree. And also then we have the Nakaya. I don't think this one is so interesting actually. They did one in the past with the little it's not really like a lion, but it's like komainu. It's like these little lion-like things that you see at temples. So they did one there because there's one that graces the Nihonbashi bridge.
Yeah, that model, last year's model, I think was more interesting because it was the 150th anniversary. Yes.
With the bridge?
Yes, with the bridge.
Yeah, I think they've done more interesting models in the past. This one is a scroll and a pen, which, it's okay.
There are a few of these. I think like Shumino Bungobaku and others have also offered like Nakayas that have some kind of funny roll stopper, right? There are very many variations of this theme.
Well, the one that I had and traded was one with the fountain pen. That one was Shumibun exclusive. And they're making 20.
Yeah. So all of these 3 pens we talked about so far are sort of variations of a theme, and you had similar models from Maruzen in the past.
Yeah.
And I think that might be the case with a 4th pen here too, which is an Sendai Ohashido.
Yeah, Ohashido is interesting because they're not commonly carried by retailers.
Right.
But all of the retailers, know and invite Ohashido to show at their special shows. So when Mitsukoshi was going on, they used to have Ohashido as well.
Yeah, I agree that Ohashido seems to be more focused on events than just regular retailer sales.
Didn't they used to make Inkidome, and I think now they stopped? Not sure.
Yeah, I'm not sure either.
Yeah, I heard a rumor that they were saying that Inkidome was kind of like mendokusai, kind of annoying to make, and most customers use cartridges anyways.
I can definitely see that being true.
Yeah,
they're quite expensive. Even these ones, 154,000 yen, but it's only going to be 10 of them.
Yeah, I think this will probably sell a few pieces, probably not all of them though.
Yeah, but I'm sure there are. I mean, the numbers there for a reason. I'm sure there are a small number of Ohashido collectors that get the new pen every year.
Yeah, I asked the staff at Maruzen which pen was the closest being sold out, and she said it was the Pilot, which is surprising to me because it's the most plain looking pen on the. Yeah.
The next pen in the list, I think, is the first one that's kind of unusual, and it's actually a new model as far as I can tell.
Yeah, it's a new model of Eboya, and I'm not a personal fan of how it looks, but I have to give them credit for doing something new.
A few new models recently, right? So we talked, so we talked about that during the Tokyo Pen Show, and here's yet another new model. For my taste, it's a little bit too slim, but it does look interesting. There's some kind of like a wave design going on here. Yeah,
and they're limiting it to 20 pens. This is a completely new model called the Nalu.
Yes.
And apparently it's inspired by the waves of Hawaii.
Yeah.
And I think it's quite interesting. I wonder what the ergonomics of this will be, because it's a wavy pen, and it could fit some people's hands, or it could be disastrous.
It might be a good gift pen.
Yeah, only at $550.
Maybe not a graduation gift, but maybe an M&A investment banking gift.
But then you want to give the Pilot, I think.
That's true.
Yeah. And the last pen, which I think has the most commercial appeal,
The last pen is one I would have expected to sell out first.
Yeah, and that's the Sunrise Trading Pro Gear. And Sunrise is the company of, is the company that hires Croissant. And she's known for doing these sparkly pens, right? And this looks a lot like her last two releases with the metal section. And one of the things I noticed is all of Sunrise pens do have this metal section.
Yes.
And this is a yellow pen, so not many yellow pens out in the market. This is one of them, which is very, very cool.
I think this will be something for one of the nib section.
Mr. Chuck.
Yes.
Yeah. This, I personally think this is a very attractive looking pen. I don't think it's for everybody. It's very glittery. It's very loud and out there. But I think it's done in a way, it kind of reminds me of a nice sunny day in the summer. And maybe the spring.
Yeah. There are 100 of them. And most of them are 44,000 yen, but the Zoom nib is a little bit more expensive, 46,750. Yeah.
And then lastly, we have the ink this year. There's a bit of story.
Yeah, this is a fun one. So the name of the ink is Nihonbashi Hayashi, and Hayashi rice is a popular dish in Japan.
What is Hayashi rice?
I would say it's sort of a sweeter version of Japanese curry rice. It's sort of a version of that. Sort of brown sauce. The story is that the founder or one of the founders of Maruzen came up with this dish and gave it its name.
Yeah, there are various competing theories, but one of them is, as you said, Mr. Hayashi, who founded Maruzen, also invented the Hayashi rice dish.
Yes.
And the color is this brownish red.
I'm not sure how much red it is, but it's definitely brown. You can actually buy Hayashi rice at Maruzen. You can buy this can shop, but you can also go to Maruzen Cafe on the third floor and order the Hayashi rice.
And that's what I'll be having for lunch.
Nice.
This ink, we haven't seen actual live samples yet, so we don't know exactly what color it is. I mean, it's always difficult to capture ink colors, but I think hopefully closer, to about February, we should be able to see some swatches.
And who knows if they're gonna give us a surprise like they did last year, right? So last year they only pre-announced one ink. It was called Kinkan, which is this sort of yellow brownish ink. When you went there, you saw three inks. There was Kinkan, Ginkan, and Dokan, and Ginkan was, I think, the most popular one, which was sort of a Sailor 1, 2, 3 style, like a chroma shading, sort of gray, purple, green. There's a lot of colors there. Yeah,
should have saved the bottle of that.
You see that ink now being sold at quite a markup on second-hand markets. So I'm sure. Yeah, go ahead.
There's one particular listing of that ink which I think is just hilarious. It's actually being sold by somebody we know for like $100. They originally tried to sell it for $300, which is like 10 times the markup. But I think it's hilarious. I mean, it's been listed for at least 7-8 months, and hasn't sold yet. But let's see what the final price will be.
Yeah, so what always happens at Maruzen, when the pen fair starts, first of all, there's always a long line outside Maruzen in the morning, right? And it opens, and the first thing everyone does is they go to the inks and they want to get all of the, 9, 10, or 11 inks that they reissue every year. So the previous pen fair exclusives are reissued every year. So everyone wants to get all of them. So
they didn't used to be, though. That's a very recent development.
Yeah, at least like 2 or 3 years, I think they've done that. And
since 2017, I think.
Yeah. And not all of them sell out, but some of them sell out very, very fast.
Yeah.
So there's the pink one, which I can't remember what it's called. But then there's
Sakuramichi.
yes, and then Kirin is always selling out very fast.
Yeah, and that's why I think it's baffling that they're allowing pre-orders of the ink.
But that I think they did that last year too.
Yeah, I don't think that should be allowed if you're going to make 300 inks. I mean, that's not a lot of inks. Whatever. I mean, it's their business. They can do whatever they want with it. And, it's kind of artificially creates demand. So, I mean, it all works out for them. We can say that actually Maruzen's probably very profitable in terms of their fountain pen section.
That might be the case,
Yeah. All right, so that was Maruzen, but we also have a huge list of others, and I think we probably have to go a bit faster.
Yeah, let's do that.
So Nagasawa came out with this blue-silver Rialo called the Chaska earlier this year. It's one of the Rialos that I really regret not buying, but there we have it. They're coming out with a Pro Gear Slim model, and I've ordered one for somebody in the US. This is the same blue as was in the Rialo, and I believe they are numbered. What do you think about the pen?
I was surprised that it wasn't the Rialo, but if you say that it's a Slim...
Yeah,
I can see that now, yeah. So that explains why it's no Rialo, because there is no Slim Rialo model, right?
No, there isn't, because of the way it's made. And, I mean, if it was a Rialo at this price, I would get, 5 of them.
3 years ago, this would have been...
This would have been the Rialo price.
Yes. Well, I really like the logo or the motif on the finial.
Yeah, it has the kanji for tea, cha, and it's because this particular Nagasawa branch is in Osaka Umeda, and it's in a place called I think it's pronounced Chayamachi.
Chaya, okay, makes sense then.
So that's why, and for those of you who don't know, Nagasawa has various different branches, and each of those branches do their own limited edition.
Yeah.
And we have a lot of different Sailor release related stuff, but I want to take a point here to point out that Sailor's clips and their trims, I think they're using a new material on these trims, because in the old Sailors, listeners will know that I've been doing plating. In the old Sailors, these trims were easily platable. But in the new Sailors, even the gold ones are not easy to plate into different colors or different materials, rather, to be precise. And I believe they now have a coating on these trims, because they're clearly still metal trims, but there's something on it that prevents the plating of these trims. So I need to investigate more on how to get that coating off, because it's annoying.
Yeah.
And the reason why I mention this is because I've been seeing comparison posts between new gold trims and old gold trims, and it seems that there's actually a noticeable difference in color as well of the trims. All right, next pen.
Yes, so the next one is a new Bang Box limited edition. It's called Matador Red. I call it the Shiny Croissant.
Yeah, the finial does look like a croissant. I mean, the finial is Raden in the shape of, I think it's supposed to be the Matador's hat. Yes. Looks like a croissant to me.
What strikes me most about this pen is not how it looks, but the price. 52,800 yen, and it's not a Rialo, so it's quite expensive.
Yeah, and I've heard that bullfighting is quite controversial in some circles, so I'm surprised. Maybe they were not aware of the controversy, but anyways, I'm surprised that they're releasing this pen at this time, because it doesn't seem to be a good time to release it, because there's not a lot of fanfare around this particular pen.
Well, they have mentioned it, of course, on the Instagram feed and on Twitter, but other than that, maybe not.
Yeah. So I guess this will be the last release from Boombox of the year.
So it's a metal section, right? But it looks like it has some kind of dark, like ruthenium coating. It looks like the same section as the black luster.
Not sure about that. It's. I mean, you could be right for sure. Yeah, it does look like the black section, but then the nib and the cap band and the clip are all gold, right?
Yes, which is an interesting combination.
I mean, it's certainly interesting, and I still have to see this pen in person. It looks like the body and the cap are both kind of translucent as well.
Yeah, there's some translucency. I mean, you can kind of sort of tell there might be a converter there. And then on the nib, there's like a laser engraved sword, right?
Yeah, and again, this is named or inspired by one of their inks, which is Matador Red.
Makes sense.
Yep. And speaking of Boombox, they did this pen 4B a while ago, and the 4B cost $800. So what the 4B was is a pen using the so-called gathered model. A gathered model is the Japanese word or the Japanese term for these ribbed bodies.
Yeah.
And they did a gathered model called the 4B where they painted the inner ridges with blue urushi, I believe. Really dark navy urushi. And then one of the bands was gold. And Sailor apparently took inspiration from that, and they came out with a model called the Wajima Biju.
So it is like the stripes, like 4B, but it's actually
smooth.
It's actually smooth, yeah. As far as I understand from the text, yeah. So this is based on Pro Gear, and there's urushi, like Wajima style urushi, which we talked about before, which is considered like perhaps the top in Japan, and the nibs have this gemstone. I think it's laser engraved. Can it be that? No, it might be stamped.
It's stamped. I think the gem is laser engraved, and the rest are stamped probably.
And then there is a bit of a Raden on the finials,
which looks a lot like what Hiroko's been doing.
Yes.
What strikes me, okay. It's a gathered model. They filled it with urushi and they polished it smooth.
Yes,
I don't
exactly.
understand what Wajima style urushi means here. There's no pattern. You filled it with urushi and you polished it flat.
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure either.
And that's always the misleading thing about this marketing material. They make it sound so, or they try to make it sound so amazing Wajima urushi, but there's no design in terms of the urushi, right? You filled it and you polished it.
I do think this looks very nice though, but the price is a bit shocking.
Yeah, they took a book out of Bungabox here. It's actually double the price.
Yeah.
Of the 4B, which is surprising to me because I think it's going to be harder to make the 4B because those have still they kept the ridges. So you'd have to polish the inner sides of the ridges as well. And it's a transparent pen. So I'm very, very surprised. But there's only 300 of these pens. And I was surprised that they went with a custom nib. Maybe it's the two-tone, but they just don't have the inner engraving. But I'm still surprised they made a new engraving for this nib.
Yeah, and I also think it's interesting given the price point that it's based on the Pro Gear and not King of Pen. I mean, we talked in the last episode about a few new King of Pen models, and some of them were
they look cheap. Well, what's going on? They look cheap compared to this pen. If it was a KOP in this, I think the price is very justified. I think it would actually be a very value pen. This price for this pen, no.
Yeah, I think it's one of the best looking new Sailor pens, but the price is a little bit shocking.
And yeah, I mean, it's certainly not their most expensive production model. They have some ceramic pens that are more expensive. We haven't really had an opportunity to talk about those, but maybe in a future episode.
Yeah.
And finally, we have the Luminous Shadow, which is the KOP-sized pen. I was hoping to get a look at it from the retailer side, but apparently this pen you can only get in the store if there is an order. So they might be made to order.
Which Sailor sometimes does, right? But I wonder if that says something about... I mean, does this mean that this is just like an experiment that they don't want to keep inventory?
Well, what's annoying about this is that you're selling a more than $1,000 pen. It's a model that nobody's seen before. How are you expecting customers to make that decision without seeing at least a sample? I mean, I understand if you don't keep inventory, right? But you have to at least give the retailers one sample of each of the colors. I don't know what they're doing.
Yeah, that's an interesting choice. I wonder if they're still going to have... If there's going to be some events like, Maruzen's Pen Fair when Sailor brings...
Yeah. This. And I hope... I certainly hope that they do bring it in March, because we've discussed in our earlier episodes that these retail... or not retailer, but like these department store events are on the decline in Japan. We used to have Mitsukoshi, and we used to have have both Mitsukoshi and Maruzen. Now it's only Maruzen, and the big retailers bring their very, very expensive pens to these events rather than events like Tips. So they are not going to Tips with these special pens. They've saved those for department store events traditionally in Japan. Sailor doesn't have a traveling show that, for example, Nakaya does. Nakaya does events all over Japan, and they're kind of like a traveling show. But outside of Maruzen, I don't know where they can bring these in terms of event-wise, because what we've seen at Bungujoshi and what we've seen at Tips is that they're bringing their low-end models.
The low-end models, yeah.
Yeah. So I'm still hoping that one of the retailers will be able to get their hands on one of these so we can check it out. But until then, I think it was interesting that they did it, but that they're not giving samples is a huge mistake.
Yeah, it's a strange choice.
Yeah.
Strange choice.
And then lastly, on the notes, we have a new Pentanote pen. And we've talked a bit about the Pentanote pen. It's something that Pentanote teased to us all the way back in June.
Yes, so we went to pen trading, Wagner's pen trading in June, and we talked to Pentanote, and then they mentioned that they were working on an exclusive pilot model, and they gave us permission to mention that on a podcast, as we did. And now they have released that, and it's called the Koseku Yuji music pen.
Yeah, what's interesting about this pen is the shape of the pen. I mean, the colors are interesting too, and it's interesting that Pilot did an exclusive to begin with, but the shape of the pen is unique.
So they say that it's based on the Custom Heritage 912, but it actually has a ball clip and has gold trims. And if you go back to earlier Pilot custom models, not Custom Heritage, but older Pilot custom models, you do find these flat top models. Yes, vest type with ball clip and with gold trims. So it sort of harkens back to earlier Pilot custom models, and it's also, I'll say, the same base as Maruzen's Lemon pens. Which is also flat top, ball clip, gold trims.
And then when we asked about the Maruzen pen, Maruzen told us that was based on the custom Kaede.
Which is a balanced style wooden pen, right?
I think so, yeah. But I mean, it's not a shape. Anyways, this is not a shape with the flat top. It's not a shape that's common in pilot pens.
Yes. So anyway, so this pen is interesting for a number of reasons. First of all, as we said, Pilot rarely does these store exclusives. We've talked about that before, how they seem to do that more as a favor to major retailers on anniversaries, and every once in a while, again, Maruzen, Lemon, Itoi has the limited edition capless pens and so on, and we talked earlier this year about Yotsuba. I think they had this Urushi pen to celebrate some major anniversaries. They do them rarely, but more as a favor to their retailers, and that's is probably the case here again. And so the reason for the name is that Koseki Yuji is apparently a composer, a fairly famous composer, it seems, in Japan. So he composed like film score, but also like gunkas, like march, war songs. But he also composed what's called a shaka, so like company songs, which is a very Japanese idea. So it's
they made Pilot and Mitsubishi pencils.
Yes, exactly. I was just going to say that's the stationary connection here. That this composer has made company songs for Pilot.
Yeah, that's hilarious.
But that also ties into what I think is sort of a lost opportunity here, because the nibs offered are EF, F, FM, and M, and I would have loved to see a music nib.
Yeah, a music nib would have been amazing, but maybe, you know what? We should ask them for this, for the music nib, because maybe they forgot. Considering it's a size 10, right? They should be able to make the music nib.
Yeah, I wonder also if it's possible that that's just not something Pilot offers. I mean, if you're commissioning a limited edition store exclusive.
Here's the thing: it's not limited edition.
It's not numbered, but I think they said they just have. I can't remember. There was a fairly small number of them.
Doesn't say so on the webpage. It says,
it says Tokubetsu Gente 100 本. Only 100 of them in total.
Okay. But anyways, we should point it out because, hopefully next time they'll remember to ask.
The nib options aside, it is a nice pen. So the barrel has this petrol blue sort of, with more of a pale blue finials or socks, as our friend Kue usually calls it.
Yep.
And the nib has a laser engraved musical note.
Yeah, and it says letters from story, which I'm not quite sure what that's supposed to mean. But it's a pretty nib.
I'm not usually into this limited edition pens. I don't buy in a limited edition sailors, and I'm pretty cheap. I only buy second-hand pens, but this pen I did pre-order.
Yeah, and it actually does come with a Con 70. One of the listeners asked me why the Sailor, the 10-year anniversary cocktails don't come with converters. And in fact, most pens in Japan do not come with converters. And the reason is because we spoke to the staff at Maruzen. The large majority of people in Japan who use fountain pens are actually using cartridges.
I think Pilot offers converters with more pens than Sailor does. Sailors are particularly bad.
I think Pilot, the higher end models come with converters, but most of the standard line does not. So I think even the 743 does not come with a converter.
Is that the case? It might be.
Yeah. But anyways, I'm very excited to see when you're going to sell this pen, because as everybody knows, you're Mr. Rent-A-Pen.
It could happen. It could happen. But I'll keep it until I get bored with it, at least.
Yeah. And it's notable, I think, to mention that the EF and the FM are already sold out. So, which goes back to us saying FM is very, very popular.
Yeah. that was a bit frustrating to me, because I remember they opened for pre-orders when I was working in the office. There was one day when I was in the office and I didn't have access to my online store accounts. I could not pre-order while I was in the office. I would look at the web page. Okay, now EF is gone. Now FM is gone. I was worried that they would all sell out before I got home.
So what did you get?
I got an F.
Okay. Those are still in stock.
Those are still available, yeah.
Jacob, you see, this is why you need to start using your phone.
I don't trust it. Just newfangled devices.
Yeah, what are these Wi-Fi waves, running through this strange device?
Yeah, I can't trust it.
Anyways, so I think we don't have too much time for questions this time. We'll try to do a special year-end, maybe, episode with maybe Quay and Alyssa. I don't know yet what the plans are, but hopefully we do want to do that. That's something that we want to do.
Definitely, yeah.
But yeah, if not, we'll see you in the new year. Thanks everybody to giving us really such a fantastic year. I think, speaking for myself, Jacob, I'm very happy to see where this project has gone. I think it's much more successful than either of us were thinking to begin with when we started this project back in March.
Yeah, I would say so.
Yeah, it's really humbling, and we're really grateful to be given this opportunity to produce this content for everybody. We said this when we started out. Information is not so easily accessible outside of Japan, and we really try to change that. So if you have any things that you want to hear, or maybe points that you think we can improve on, we always welcome you to contact us through the website, which is tokyoinklings.com. You can find a Ask a Question form over there. So if you have any comments for us, feel free to drop us a line through that form. You can discuss the episode on that website as well. There is a dedicated page for every single episode.
Yeah.
All right. So with that being said, my name is CY. You can find me on my website at tokyostationpens.com, on Instagram at tokyostationpens, and on Twitter at tokyostationmnh.
And my name is Jacob, and I'm Foodafan on Instagram and Twitter. I have a blog at foodafan.com.
Bye-bye.